So, welcome. Hello, friends. I'm Mary Frangie, Program Specialist at the Trauma Research Foundation, and welcome to the fourth session of Inspired Parenting, parenting from an attachment and trauma perspective with the wonderful Daphne Lender. This is a free 8-part monthly series, and whether you're a parent or interact with children in other capacities, we're sure you'll find this information encouraging and useful, and find Daphne's hands-on tools a resource you can apply right away. And this work applies to people from 18 months to 100 years old. Today's topic is how to handle problem behaviors like a sore loser or a child who lies or steals. About halfway through the program, there'll be an opportunity for volunteers to come on the screen with Daphne to ask a question. If you'd like to volunteer, raise your hand at any time and keep it raised. And please keep your question relevant to today's topic. Please note that this discussion is not a substitute for, nor does it replace professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have any concerns or questions about yours or your child's health, always consult with a physician or other healthcare professional. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. It tells YouTube that this content is valuable and they'll show it to more people. It's my great pleasure to introduce Daphne Lender.
Remember that this is inspired parenting from an attachment and trauma perspective. So you're not going to be surprised to hear the following, which is that, first of all, if you lost a game when you were a child, whether it was Monopoly, whether it was a card game or arm wrestling, or whether it was on the football field, whether it was a game of chess, or if anybody, maybe just you made a bet with somebody and you lost the bet, something like that. How did you react? And how did your parents react to you if you had feelings about it? If you were crying or disappointed, or you kicked the wall, or you threw something, or you got sullen. Why am I asking this? Because our reactions as parents is really greatly informed by what happened to us when we were children, and we don't remember it. We might remember fragments, but there's a lot that's non-conscious. We might have also seen our parents react to our siblings and internalize a message like, that is something I will never do. And those stay dormant until our children evoke really strong reactions in us. And we may vow that we're not going to react in the same way that our parents did. And yet it jumps out like a dragon that is emerging from our stomach or some sort of, deep, dark place in us. And we then justify it and rationalize it, or we feel really bad, then we try to ignore it and not address it. So all those things that we do after we react by yelling or criticizing or harshly punishing or withdrawing from our child, we then rationalize why we do that. Well, it's good for him and he has to learn, and I was raised this way and I turned out okay. Or maybe you're telling yourself something like, I'm a no good, rotten parent because my child is behaving badly and doesn't know how to win gracefully, or is a liar or steals things. And so I'm no good and rotten. And so I'm going to give up and retract any effort I can make to connect with the child or to repair. That's another kind of reaction. Note that those patterns are actually all fallout from what you experienced when you were a child. Now, why is that important? Because we first have to notice what we're feeling, acknowledge that part of it, the big feelings, is coming from our past, and then take a moment to put your hand on your heart and give yourself a message of self-compassion, which is take a breath and say, I can give myself a moment to relax. I can give myself a moment to take some space and not judge myself harshly. I can believe that I can take the next right step. And so those are all calming and affirming statements that even if you don't believe them in the moment, you would want to say them to yourself because it helps you to regulate. And that is the most important thing that you're going to be able to do in order to then influence your child to be able to weather his storm. Okay, so each and every one of you, I want you to hear me and believe me when I tell you that your reaction to your child when they're doing something like being a sore loser or lying or stealing, when you have a strong reaction, you first want to be able to tune in and check with yourself. What are you saying to yourself about yourself? Like, I'm a no good, rotten parent, or I failed, or my child's going to go to jail, or all the catastrophizing that you do, or he deserves it. Those kinds of messages. Listen to the voice and then put your hand on your heart. Nobody else will notice. Nobody's going to wonder why you're doing this. It's a perfectly natural thing to do. Take a breath. Find yourself one message of self-compassion and say it, even if to yourself, even if you don't believe it. I'm okay as I am. I can do the next right thing. Showing up right now matters. That's an anchor that's going to get you a little bit of regulation, and then you'll be able to help your child. So if I could reach out across the screen and shake your hand to make like a social contract, you can do it. That is the first thing. Okay. Now let's get to the other, the subject matter. Why does a child behave in such a way that they can't stand to lose? And when something frustrates them, or they didn't get first place, or somebody didn't follow the rules the way they think, why do they have an all-out tantrum and start to pout and yell and cross their arms, and then they don't want to play anymore, or they might even knock the board over? They might go so far as throwing something at the other player, or really upsetting the whole situation. The reason why is really important. And the interpretation that you give is crucial. Most parents think it's because he is immature, selfish, manipulative, controlling, just trying to see what he can get away with, or he needs to be disciplined. His parents are, if it's somebody else who's judging you, his parents are not being strict enough. They let him get away with everything. She's spoiled. Okay. So I just named about 9 of the most common reasons, and all of them are extremely morally judgmental. They're really, really judgmental. They ascribe negative motives on the part of either the child or their parent. Negative characteristics, as if it's your personality that's defective. And from an attachment perspective, that's wrong. That is not correct. A child at age 5 or 8 is not manipulative just because he wants to be able to get everything that he wants. A person is not born selfish. A person is not born unempathic. A person is not controlling just so that he can get, everything to his advantage. That isn't why people are motivated to behave in those ways. There's something underneath, and that can be things like they feel disconnected or lonely or rejected. They somehow feel hurt And another thing that's really important is it can be a very much an issue of regulation. So I'm going to talk first about regulation, because regulation and getting dysregulated is a more primary, or something that's more primitive and comes first before other things like thinking, I feel lonely, I feel hurt, I feel misunderstood, I feel less than. Regulation is something that an infant is experiencing, needing another person to help him to co-regulate from the moment that he's born, and when the baby is placed on the mother's chest, and then the mother's body heat regulates the baby's body temperature and heart rate. Okay, that's co-regulation. Now, there are children who don't get the kind of co-regulation that they need. Children who are abused and neglected, for example, they're left alone too much in the crib. They have a wet diaper and they don't get changed. Or they hear domestic violence, people screaming, and they're very frightened, but nobody comes and picks them up and holds them and explains to them what's going on. Okay. Well, that child will then be extremely sensitive to being shamed or feeling ashamed, because when a baby isn't taken care of and co-regulated, they don't experience that sense of, I can get calm, I can get help from someone else, and that person cares about me. All those elements make a person able to then regulate themselves when they're in kindergarten and they don't get called on by the teacher, or they're not first in line to go out to recess. That co-regulation aspect of a parent coming and shushing and rocking and soothing the baby teaches a baby how to then become a toddler and then a kindergartner and so on, who is able to feel intense negative affect, like being disappointed, and then not lash out. Okay. So I think everybody can understand that abuse and neglect will cause a child to then be very sensitive to being rejected, and they don't have the regulation skills, right? Okay. Well, that will make maybe them be a sore loser, and you can certainly understand that. What about a child who did have decent parenting, good enough parenting? A child who was picked up and did have their needs met? Well, we have this situation where a child can be constitutionally, just from their personality, really, really sensitive. Their neurology, literally, their nervous system is extremely sensitive. They get easily overwhelmed, and they're very sensitive to rejection. They notice everything around them. Certain things like people's facial expressions can feel more intense or menacing to them. And all this stimulation and their sensitivity can make them feel really out of control and really easily feeling like the stimulation is coming at them and they take it personally. So every time they experience something that's a little bit of a failure or frustration, to them, it feels like a menace, like a wave of overwhelming experience. And they're so sensitive to that experience, and they want to fend it off. They don't want that to happen over and over again. They're not prepared for it. And then they have some really strong reaction, like a temper tantrum, where they kick or flip the board game over or something like that. When you do that as a child, even as a grown-up, when you do that, you feel terrible. You feel embarrassed. You feel, I'm a no good, rotten kid. It's actually really a frightening thing to have that out of control feeling and that kind of what feels like a tidal wave happening to you. And it just compounds the sense of feeling out of control and ashamed. Okay. So imagine if you were just walking around, hanging out, just doing your thing. And then all of a sudden you get this huge wave, like a tidal wave of feeling totally out of control. And then you start acting really, really, crazy, and you start flailing your arms and legs and shouting. And then people come and they look at you and they talk to you, and that makes you feel worse. And the entire thing blows up where you start screaming, and you then want to either retreat, like run away, or you just want to kick and hurt other people. And the entire event just leaves you feeling exhausted, confused, overwhelmed. That's what it feels like to certain children with certain constitutional their personalities, that they're so sensitive. A lot of people with ADHD have these kind of symptoms. And it's just really overwhelming to have just a regular day for them to go to school to keep it together. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a regulation issue. All right. So we have this experience with these kinds of children where something that they're experiencing, and it doesn't go the way that they expect, or they feel that they've lost, or something doesn't go the way they want. And then they get that wave of feeling out of control, and they're super scared of that wave. So they're extra controlling. When that wave comes, then they act out, and they then on the other side of it feel exhausted and ashamed and discouraged. And that's a regulation issue. You can look at it as a curve of, amplifying the feeling of distress and dysregulation. And then the end of it, they're feeling exhausted. Now, if you look at the behavior of a child who, let's say, loses at Monopoly or Candyland, and then they say, "That's not fair, he wasn't playing right, that wasn't his turn," and starts kicking or starts, stomping or calling names. If you look at it not as he's being manipulative or he's being mean on purpose or he's controlling, but more of sort of a tsunami of a intense dysregulation, you're going to treat it really differently. Okay. What you're going to do, and here's the key, people want to know, that's all well and good, what am I supposed to do? Okay. So one of the things you want to do is you want to keep composure in your face. We've talked about this before. I talked about it in my previous sessions. The first thing you have to do is remember your social engagement system. Is you can't start having a menacing look on your forehead and say, if you don't stop, you're going to have to go to your room. If you say it like that, and you're saying it with a voice that's menacing and a face that's menacing, they're going to be escalated. And so what I want you to do is say, what we're going to do right now is we're going to move away and take a time out on the other side of the room. Okay. And you just kind of want to sweep them along, and you have to have your forehead not wrinkled, and your voice is going to have that prosodic voice, and you're going to sort of move them, but you're not going to, I don't want you to have to restrain or push, but more so just to kind of accompany them. They might shake you off or something like that, but you're gonna turn to your side and you're say, "Yep, this is what we're doing now," because we're going to take some moments to chill out or relax or take a break, something like that. And the words that you have to say are, "You're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. We're going to get through this. And now we're taking a break." So you're saying things that are much more about reassurance that we're going to get through this than telling him, "You better stop. You're not playing fair. you're not following the rules. You're going to have to go to timeout. That's very different. So I really hope that you can hear from the tone that saying something like we're going to move over here and take a break for a few minutes, but you're not in trouble and you're not a bad kid, and I'm not mad at you. And if we're going to get through this, we're going to work it out and it'll be over soon. Okay. So the other message that you're hearing me say is you have to move the child away from the scene of the action if there's other kids and adults. We don't need everybody to sit there and be looking at them and staring at them. So if you can tell the other adults or the other children and just prepare them for the next time, you know, that you don't have to just kind of stare at the kid, and you certainly don't have to help me and chime in if there's other siblings. And so what you're doing is you're accompanying them from this big crescendo or tsunami of feelings, and do not respond to the content. The kids are going to say provocative things while they're calming down. They're going to say, he's no good and rotten, and he lies, and you always side with him, and I'm never playing, and I hate you. I hate this family. Those are essentially like they're detritus. They're little pieces. They're fragments of dysregulation, and they're coming out as aggression. In terms of verbally, they might be mean and saying, I hate you and things like that. Now, if they're saying something like, I hate you, or I hate this family, I actually take that as something that is says, this is how intensely I'm feeling. I'm feeling really intensely. I'm feeling really, really, really horrible. And so I don't take offense to that. I don't say, that's not a nice thing to say. You better stop it. That's ungrateful of you. Do not listen. Do not grab onto those saying what they're saying and say, that's not nice. Okay. Say, I got you. Yep. This is going to take a few minutes, and then it'll be better. And then if they say something like, stop it, you're not even listening to me, be like, you're going to get through this. It's going to be okay. So if they say something like, they start swearing at you and things like that, you could certainly say, you know what, I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm not going to let you hurt me. So that's not okay for you to talk to me like that. That's totally fine for you to say. But the idea is that you want to look at it from the point of view of regulation, not from the point of view of he's a sore loser. Once he calms down, it'd be great. By the way, you should always try to give them something to drink, like with a straw or with ice, because that sensory piece is going to change their brain and kind of calm their system. So that, or you could also open a window so that you have different air temperature and different air pressure. Also a change of scenery if you open the window, taking a walk, reading a story, putting on music, allowing the child to go into a little special room. Like I like for people to be able to create if you have a closet, that you can make them into a special place where they can hide, like take out the stuff and put in stuffed animals and pillows. There's just sometimes kids need to be alone, because just you talking with them, even if you accompany them to the other room, they might find your face or your voice stimulating. So once they get through that, a lot of people will come back and say, all right, now you have to apologize. And what were you supposed to do? And do you know how to play by the rules? And if you don't play by the rules, nobody's going to want to play with you on the playground, or no wonder you don't have any friends. And I'm again asking if I could shake your hand and I could hold your hand and ask you, try not to say those things. The moralizing at the end is like taking away or detracting from what you've done in terms of helping them to regulate. And so I'm suggesting that you try to reincorporate them back into the social scene if there's other siblings there, or if it's in a classroom, or maybe, the family is sitting down for dinner, some other getting on with the rest of your day. Try to incorporate the child back into the rest of the day, into the flow, without trying to teach them like a lesson. Okay. That is a very sensitive period after that. After 5 hours later, the next day or something like that, if you need to give the child a consequence, it's okay. I am not saying that you should not have a consequence. Usually the consequence is a logical and natural consequence that comes from what should be an evident, obvious result from the situation. For example, if a child is not able to play, a game like Monopoly because he gets too upset, then he should team up with his parent and they should be on the same team, or with another older sibling or something like that. But don't play Candyland or Monopoly, whatever it is, because that game is hard for that kid. So you could say, what would be a way, you could ask the child, what would be a way for us to be able to play that if you didn't win tried to cheat or something like that, like last time, that you'd be able to get through it without getting so upset. So talk to him about it, but you're not going to let that, you're not going to let it happen again by just trying to set him up for the same disappointment. Maybe you could just say, we can play a different activity that doesn't have as much rules, and then we can try playing Monopoly in another couple of weeks. Now people say, but hold on a second, how are they going to learn to play by the rules? Well, it's true that life has rules and that people have to, follow the rules. But when I say that, it isn't that I'm letting him off the hook. It's just right now he's in a developmentally younger stage and he's not able to handle that. So that doesn't mean that he won't be able to handle rules later on. So maybe, okay, right now some people will say, well, my kid is like 9 or 10. So if he's not able to play Monopoly or Candyland at this time, what is he going to be like when he's 14 and 15? I wouldn't let your brain run to catastrophize, because for sure what's happening now is not good and it's making his self-esteem worse. And when you have that problem where, it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy of I can't play well, I'm a sore loser, I cheat, those kinds of things just compound themselves. And so we just want to set them up for what they're able to do successfully. So more successful activities are, doing arts and crafts, or building something, or helping to cook, or taking care of the animals, things like that, things that don't set the child up for that kind of really clear, rules of an activity or a game that are so black and white for a child who's having that kind of a hard time. So I've spoken about, kids who are sore losers, and we talked about regulation. We talked about the fact that this is not a moral issue, and that I don't want you to, moralize and give like moral lectures after the episode is over. Now I want to talk about lying, and I want to ask for volunteers who will, if you want to ask a question, then you can be promoted to panelist, and then you can put your camera on if you have a question. Okay, so lying is it is a really sensitive topic, especially for adults. When our children lie to us, we feel betrayed. A lot of adults have been lied to when they were children, and there's a tremendous sense of betrayal, and it brings up a lot of trust issues in us. And then we tend to really lay on thick the moral aspect. We say to our kids, it's not the fact that you took, the iPad from the drawer when I told you were grounded from that. It's the fact that you lied to me about that and that I can't trust you. That's the part that bothers me the most. That is really common for people to say, and I'm asking you to avoid saying that if at all possible. Okay. Why is that? It's because you're putting the child into double jeopardy. Double jeopardy, the legal term is that not only did the child break the rule and take the iPad when they weren't supposed to, when they were grounded, but then he lied and said that somebody else did it and that he didn't touch it. So he's in trouble both for taking the iPad and for lying. That's double jeopardy, right? You will not get a child to say I'm sorry or cooperate if they feel that in the hole, okay? But they are in deep trouble. When somebody is in deep trouble, all they do is go into shame, and shame is a place that is all black. You feel like you're covered with the tar of the most disgusting kind of hateful self-loathing, like I am no good and rotten. There's nothing good that I've ever done. And so I hate myself. Or alternatively, they turn it into I hate my parents and I'm going to try to, I'm going to run away, or I'm going to kill them, or I'm going to beat them up, or that kind of inner hatred turned outward. Okay. So lying. Well, I really suggest that you look at it more into, first of all, is the child afraid in general? Afraid of getting in trouble? Are the rules too strict? Is there a lot of yelling? Is there a lot of menacing behavior in the home? Is there a lot of people, grown up saying that something like, you're lying, or you're going to go to hell, or, things that are really, really frightening, that causes kids to not be able to tell the truth. All of us, all humans lie. That's just a fact of life. And we protect ourselves. And that's a very, very basic mechanism. We do things that we're not supposed to because human beings are of two minds. We have conflicted feelings. And if anybody has even, an iota of doubt about the fact that we're all liars, just think about the last time you said you were going to go on a diet. In the morning, you said you were going to go on a diet, and then at night you were a completely different person and you ate the chocolate cake in the fridge. I don't need to, go further. Okay. We're always of two minds about, many aspects of our behavior or our existence. So I'd like to just let you know that if there's a lot of fear, then children are going to have a really hard time telling the truth about the mistakes that they've made and the bad choices that they've done, or whatever it is they're trying to cover up. So beyond that, if you know that your child has done something, like let's say, they did something like they kicked another kid in school, and then the teacher called and reported that, and then you say, hey, how was your day at school? And then the kid says, oh, it was fine. You say, hey, that's not true. I know the teacher called and said that you kicked another kid and that you had to go to the principal's office. So what you should do is, if you know a child lied, is to say, hey, you know what? I know that this happened. And so this is what we're going to do about it, or how do you think we should handle it? How are we going to make it up to this person? Or you're going to need to pay them back from your piggy bank, or if they need to do some act of service or something like that. But don't set them up to have to lie about stealing, okay? And then they are caught in a lie. Just let them know that you know what happened and how you're going to deal with it. Okay. It is going to be a really, really big step towards them trusting you if you don't punish them harshly, and you just find more towards the idea of restitution, which is how are you going to make it up if you stole something. You're going to give it back. You're going to write a note. You're going to do an act of service. And that's going to go a long way to making the child trust you. Okay. The trust will come that they'll be able to tell you. So, I had a kid who was out with friends, and there's a kid in therapy, and ended up, he was told that he should never, ever, ever drive drunk or high. And his parents let him have the car, and then he went ahead and drove home drunk. And his parents were really mad at him. And of course, and he was grounded from the car, of course, and he was grounded in general. Okay, that's all, reasonable. But when we talked about it, he felt that he couldn't tell his parents. And they had told him, you can tell us if you ever get in trouble, don't drive your car, don't drive the car, call us and we'll come pick you up and we'll pick the car up later. But he felt that he couldn't because he didn't want to tell them that he was drunk. And he didn't want to tell them that he and his friends had also been using marijuana. And I can understand that. He didn't want to tell them. But the cycle really continues when there's a lot of anger. And one of the things that this family was prone to do was give a ton of lectures. You are going to not get into the college that you want. If your behavior continues, you're not going to get good grades anymore. My expectation for you is that you do better than this. And there's so much of that it created a lot of distance between them. And so we had to spend, we're spending quite a lot of time talking about the sense that this kid doesn't feel like he's able to be open with his parents, even though he wants to. And the parents are beginning to understand that. And we're also exploring the parents' history of having a really harsh, very frightening parents. So I am open to questions now. And for those of you who wish to answer or to have I think we only have 19 minutes left. So I think we'll probably be able to take maybe 5, but possibly only 4 people. And so if you have a question and you want to be promoted to panelist, what you're going to do is raise your hand on the bottom right. It says raise hand. And then my colleagues will be able to promote you to panelist.
Daphne, a question that came in earlier is about a baby co-regulating. Is it okay if the baby rests on the chest of another parent other than the primary, if the mom is the primary?
Of course, yeah. Oh, yes. Perfect. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, how much would I love to have a baby rest on my chest? I'll be somebody's grandmother, like right away. Okay, Jessica.
Hi, I'm wondering for myself, and I'm a counselor for clients, if I think your stuff is great and I believe it and I still keep listening because I always get something out of it. But what about if you see kids, like parents, friends that are just not at all getting it? They want to blame their kids, and it's really hard to see that kids really suffering.
Oh, are you saying it's more friends or family?
And then, yes, other people.
Yeah, well, the thing is that if they didn't ask your opinion, it's not really something.
Well, and sometimes they even do, but even then, yeah. So I don't want to break the trust they have in me. Like, I'm just trying to be compassionate to their situation.
Oh, I think what you should do, in that case, what you should do is say, like, if they're asking for feedback, then you say, hey, you know what are you trying to do by, like screaming at your kid or telling him that he's like, going to be
right.
whatever, go to jail or not going to go to college or something like that. And then they'll say, well, what I'm trying to do is just, get through to him and get him to understand, that like he has to play by the rules. And you say, right. You really want him to understand and like play by the rules. And he is so that he's successful, right? So that he can get a job, right? So that he can like have friends. Is that what you want? And they say, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And you say, of course you do. And I want that too. Here's my fear is that by doing it in this way of like screaming at him, it's going to push him further away from you and it's not going to meet that needs. And how long have you been doing that for? And they'll say, well, I've been doing it. It's happened ever since he was 14 and he's 16. Okay. So I think it's it's time to try something different. And, give them a few suggestions.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But always start with their good intentions.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah.
Is their worry,
Yeah. Figure out, get to that part first so they be open. Okay. And what if the kid is actually being abused? Sorry, but like being
actually being abused. Oh no. I mean, I guess you have to call the child protection.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Imminent danger and all that.
Yeah. just try to be, I mean, if it's not, sometimes it isn't like, there are situations in which a child is being emotionally abused, but that child protection will never take the call.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's just a matter of, can you be a friend to that child without, sabotaging the parents, without, be accepting and empathic with the kid, take him out to ice cream, go to his game, his soccer game, like being that secondary attachment figure to somebody and like bringing that kid, like, their favorite, whatever, candy or something like that. Or making them soup when they come to your house because they love that soup. It's like, it's incredible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Daphna, Jennifer asks in the chat, the knee-jerk reaction from adults is often, why did you do that? Why is this happening? Why are you doing this? Is there a way around, or how do we move away from the why questions when that seems to be the default for adults?
Yeah. If you ask a child why he did something like that, they can't say because they don't know why, because it's non-conscious. So they'll say something that is really superficial and sometimes really very rude, like, well, she did it to me, so that's why I did it to her. But underneath it, they're not able to say non-consciously, I feel lonely. I feel like you love her more than me. I feel rejected. I feel not as good. I'm not good enough. And so if I think that if parents understand that, they would be able to be what there's an acronym called PACE: playful, accepting, curious, and empathic. In this case, if a kid did something like, whatever, knock the board over or something, or steal somebody's phone or something like that, there's no room really to be playful, but acceptance, empathy, and curiosity. So the first thing you would say is, you know what? I know that this happened and that this is a really crummy situation. And I know you're not happy about it and I'm not happy about it either. So just acceptance and empathy, and just say, you probably, from your point of view, probably had some really, good reasons why you were behaved in this way. And, I'm curious what was on your mind. And if what was going on for you. The first thing that the kid's going to say is the same, the defensive thing, like, oh, it's because, she always gets everything and she took all my stuff, and, you guys love her more than me. And, or, he's going to say things that are pretty annoying to the parent. And so Again, acceptance, empathy, and curiosity. Hey, thanks for telling me what's on your mind. That would feel super crummy if that's what you thought. Can you tell me more? And eventually the child will say things that are more that are deeper, that he might feel left out or something like that. So I think that if parents have a better way of helping the child to get to their deeper feelings, they will be more apt to do that rather than just saying, why did you do that? Like, you have your own iPhone. Why did you take her stuff? What's wrong with you? So yeah, I just really remember acceptance, empathy, and curiosity. And, it doesn't mean you're agreeing with them when you say, from your point of view, you probably, had your reasons for acting, for doing what you did. And so I'm just curious about that. It does not mean you're condoning his behavior. And it does not mean that you're not going to get a consequence.
Right. Thank you. And Abby just dropped a link to the PACE, a PACE explanation in the chat for anyone who needs it.
Hey, that's great. Thanks, Abby. How resourceful.
Another quick question from the chat, and then I've got someone else who'd like to come on screen. How do you address sibling rivalry with a sensitive child when they start fortune telling regarding their sibling? Like, she's doing that because she wants me to get in trouble, and she's so mean and annoying.
I wouldn't, don't respond to the content, because that's because they're dysregulated, they're being provocative. And they've harnessed those kinds of, blaming the other sibling and describing their behavior because they're really intelligent, and they've seen that it sort of deflects, because then people will argue with them. And instead, see that as part of the dysregulation and do not respond to that part. Just be like, hey, you know what? I got you, and I know that we're going to get through this soon, and this is what we're doing now. We're going to take a walk around the block, So don't respond to the actual content of like, hey, that's none of your business. Don't say, and it's not time to blame your sister, and she's not doing it. She's not doing it on purpose anyway. Don't go down that road.
Okay, that's great.
Hi. So I just had a question. I help with my brother-in-law's kids, my nephew and two nieces. So my 7-year-old nephew is very extreme. My sister died a couple years ago, so I know part of it is the loss is what his reactions. But like, for example, Friday I thought someone was hurt, so I ran upstairs because I was down, in my office working, and he was screaming because my niece was putting his ice cream in a cup instead of a bowl, because the bowls were all dirty. How do I help teach him some regulation? Because I'm not with him all the time, but he doesn't have that. I'm kind of his mother figure right now, but It's very, very super extreme really quickly. And that's just a small example.
Yeah. How old is he, that one?
He's 7. He's in 1st grade.
Oh, okay. When a kid screams, you actually felt that somebody was getting hurt because the way he was screaming was
I thought someone was really, really injured. So I ran upstairs in a panic. Yeah.
Right. Somebody finger got chopped off or something.
Yeah.
God forbid. But it startles our nervous system so much.
Yeah.
That we're in panic mode. And as soon as we find out that it's just the fact that the ice cream is not in the, bowl, it's in a cup, you're just oh my God, calm down. But we have to sort of see it as a phenomenon of, he's just dysregulated. His dysregulation is so loud. And so he needs the kind of, metaphorically, when I think of a baby who's crying and who has colic and you go, shh.
Yeah.
You have to get very vigorous, sort of matching and I got you. Oh, I see. It's okay. Yep. I know you wanted that cup, the bowl instead of the cup, and kind of let him have his space to like kick and scream about it. Okay. And it's not so much that you're going to change the trajectory. Like he's still going to go over that kind of crescendo to then the decrescendo, but where you're going to just try to stay, empathic. Don't react to the content. Like he might say something like, she's so stupid. She wasn't, he might throw insults and things like that, and try not to get into that.
Okay.
Down that avenue, because it's going to continue the dysregulation. So hopefully you're going to just accompany him and say, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this soon. You're not in trouble. You didn't do a lot of reassurance.
Okay. Yeah, because he always thinks he's in trouble if he gets mad or, things like that. But I don't get him in trouble for it, but I don't know if his dad does sometimes or something like that. So.
Yeah. Kids, maybe other adults do. And also kids who have had like trauma.
Yeah.
Like because you mentioned that his mom died. Is that right?
Yeah, she died when he was 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So
in a very
lot of
traumatic way. So.
Well, that could be a sense of feeling like really, really out of control. Okay.
Right.
And I don't know what usually when that happens, it's a very, very, very chaotic time.
Yeah.
A lot of crying or a lot of, people feeling really and acting really out of control. And so it's extremely frightening in and of itself. And then he just kind of like mimics that, like it's almost like a trauma reaction. And so how you respond in a more supportive and soothing way. And as I said, do not respond to the content part of it.
Okay.
That's going to really help.
Okay. That helps, because I think that's the reaction, is to respond to the content, to like poke holes in his, like, why he's reacting the way, like, that's not a reason to react this level, but yeah. Okay.
I know. It's hard not to.
It's a constant thing with him, but I was just like, well, because he's very, 1 second he's calm and then the next super explosive.
Yeah. And just, by the way, another thing that I just thought of was like, as soon as you can provide any kind of like soothing touch, like proprioceptive input on the back, like any kind of, or on the shoulder, anything, or holding hands or something.
Kind of
that's really,
again.
Yeah. Just in connection. 'Cause he's scared too,
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Vicki. Okay. And we'll take one more from Erin. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Daphna. My question is regarding, I guess, partially at least issues of the way other siblings or children see this. And you mentioned that, at the end of this, maybe, avoid moralizing and bringing them back in. And I think sometimes I do that because I had a daughter who has an impressionable younger brother. And so it's like, well, I kind of want to make sure that he understands what is okay, because I don't necessarily know that he would react to this. But if he sees her doing it, then maybe he starts doing some of these same behaviors, even if it's not, prompted by a dysregulation. And then similarly, like when she does have these tantrums and then starts getting and yelling or saying insulting things to him, then he feels it. And so then I think sometimes I intervene in a way where it's like, I do the moralizing, or I do try to like, maybe I'm afraid to like accommodate her so much that he feels like I don't care about his feelings. So what
Fair
is
enough.
what kind of suggestions do you have for that type of situation?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, Erin, anytime you have two kids, it's like you're always feeling like if you're taking one kid's, if you're helping one kid, it's as if you're, not helping the other. I know that it really does feel that way, because it there is a little bit of that dynamic. The first thing you mentioned is I wouldn't worry about him being impressionable and taking on the behaviors that she's doing.
Okay.
I would just let him go, because unless he's actually doing that, I would sort of not borrow trouble and just not think about that. Because in the context of him watching her go through that, he kind of knows that she's like suffering and that it isn't fun. And if he tries it on for size, he deserves to be able to have, a tantrum himself as well. Right. So I don't want you to have to worried that it's like so contagious that it's going to be like, then end up that you're going to have 2 kids with like huge dysregulation issues, you know? The other part though, if he's insulting her, if she's insulting him and saying, you know, he's so stupid, you know, you can always, you know, and I say don't address the content, but if she's doing that to her brother, you could say, you know what, it's not okay to call him that name. Okay, because that hurts his feelings. Now it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. We're going to move to, you know what I mean? Like very 15 seconds, say, hey, you know what? It's not okay for you to say that to call him names because that hurts his feelings, you know, and then just be like, okay, and now we're going to move over here and we're going to get through this and da 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 da, and you know, that with the prosodic voice and getting him a drink and getting her a drink and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. So kind of addressing it, but still maintaining all that calm and addressing it not in that moralistic way, just kind of kind of factual.
Yeah. And just for, you know, you change your tone a little bit by saying, hey, you know what? It's not okay to call him stupid when, you know, because it hurts his feelings. And now, okay, so this is what we're going to do next. You're not in trouble. You're not a bad girl. We're going to get through this soon. And da, 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 you know. I hope everybody can also hear that it's not so much like a calm voice. It's a rhythmic voice that's pretty confident and has a lot of leadership in it too.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Erin. That was a good question. And it's time for us to wrap up.
Time for us to wrap up. And it really seems that practice is what we all need as parents and caregivers. Practice with this over and over because so much of it does not come automatically. Well, Daphne, thank you so much. This was really great. And thanks to our volunteers. We really appreciate your questions and your vulnerability coming on screen. Please join us next time for the 5th session, which is how to regulate your reaction to your child. And all the previous sessions can be found when you log into your TRF account, go to My Purchase Content. You'll see the videos there of anything you've missed thus far in the series. So thank you. Behind the scenes is Abby Bueno, our TRF customer service specialist. I'm Mary Frangie. Daphne, we appreciate you so much. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks a lot, friends. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Thanks for being here.